All right, so we're back talking about this ARPG that I'm making, this time focusing on the prototyping stage of things. So last time we looked at just kind of some basic gameplay, uh, functionality, I guess, in a playground where I was just kind of sampling, what was possible, learning coding, that kind of stuff. But at this point, I wanted to take a little break from the actual coding during the prototyping stage and, yeah, share what I've got so far with everyone because I think this is an interesting point where I've got some options on things to move on from. So it's probably going to be easiest to just jump right in, show you what I've got. I just want to say up front, there's tons of jank. This is early rough prototyping, so like the enemy AI is garbage. You'll see lots of like animation, jitter, all that kind of stuff. But nothing I'm really worried about. It's all stuff that I can smooth out going forward. Can kind of polish up. Nothing that I'd really expect to make it into the final version, but it's enough making excuses. Let's just boot this up, see what we've actually got. So it's a different sprite than what I'd used in the demo thing before. We're gonna have like 3 waves of enemies here coming about. It's all just random what enemy types we actually get. You'll see we've got like this slide maneuver. I'm just darting all over the place, kind of like a Dark Souls roll type thing. The abilities that I showed off the last time with kind of the explosion, this ice projectile. And you'll see down at the bottom, it's like the count of how many we've got. And I've also added this like magic wall that I can shoot through, but enemies can't get through. We've got like the slowdown time dilation thing there. It looks like we got hit, so got interrupted on the lightning here. Yeah, a 3-hit combo here. This kind of, you can sort of see it as I'm just getting beat up here. And then this like a little bit more distance on this other attack kind of thing. Okay, yeah, looks like we've got 4 enemies. Looks like all 4 of them spawned. This is pretty much I've got. There's nothing special if you like beat everyone here or if you die, like no screen or congratulations or anything like that. So I think this kind of shows everything off. Oh, I've got this weird particle effect thing going on there. I'll get into that. I was messing around with that a bit. Yeah, like you'll see if I take damage or hit or shoot a wall, some projectiles exploding. That's probably about all that I've really got to show off as my character dies there. So, a lot of things in place functionally that wasn't there before. It's a big leap from that playground, but it's been a lot of coding. So yeah, I don't know if you're, again, an experienced Unity developer, this probably looks pretty normal, but this was another step in my process as somebody who's quite new to this, thinking this was going to be a lot harder than it actually ended up being. I don't think there's anything particularly impressive about what I've done, at least technically speaking. But I wanted to show off at this point because there was a lot that I did with prototyping, and some that you see in here, some that you don't, that I kind of threw away, at least for now. I wanted to talk about what kind of went good, what kind of went bad, and then where this is getting my head going as far as next steps. So, yeah, what was the good? What was I happy with from being able to get all this done? First thing, just functionally, all this stuff was possible and pretty easy, right? So to me, that's a big deal. How hard is it to move around, get basic enemy AI? Like you could see, pretty brain dead. They don't really know how to move around collisions or anything like that very well. But yeah, I can see the path forward to making that a lot easier if I want to get some kind of smarter stuff. The archers would turn around and run and that kind of stuff. So if I want to get more complicated pieces in there, that one enemy at the end, they sort of like cast an ability and then have a cooldown on that. So I know what that looks in code, writing these kind of asynchronous processes, so that was kind of neat. Yeah, so that I was very happy with. The other thing I was happy with was just sort of the basic gameplay feel. It's very stiff right now. Always hard to translate feel through video. You just kind of have to pick up a controller or mess around the keyboard to really know what it's like. I like how the abilities work together. So having a couple of ranged abilities, having this like close-up explosion thing, they feel like they do complement themselves or each other rather pretty well. I like the fourth ability addition of this barrier, this wall kind of thing, and I can see expanding upon these things, increasing duration and size and number of projectiles and how many casts of it you get. This whole like cooldown recharge system, yeah, all of that feels pretty good, even though it's not perfect, it's not polished, but it's enough that I was happy with it. Yeah, that's probably about it for what I was happy with. Excuse me. But yeah, what am I not happy with? What else do we kind of what are we looking for? The big thing right now for me is visually. Visually, this is, in my mind at least, a mess. So, I talked about before, I had this other sprite, right? This was from the, what do you call it? The sort of playground video that we had going on before. So if I hide that, you can get a better view. He's got lots of actions and animations, that's kind of why I picked him, and he fits in a little better with some of the existing sprites, but like, I don't know, he doesn't really seem to fit in as well with this background, for example. I don't like his attacks, they're just kind of weak, I don't know, they feel not very satisfying, so that's why I pivoted to this. It was labeled as like a Souls-like type character. Boy, do I love those Souls games. So I prefer this kind of style, and then if I am to move towards like an item system, I'd like to have, boots and a helmet and stuff like that. It makes a little more sense on a character where you can kind of see them. Although, you can make up anything you really wanted, headbands, all that kind of stuff to kind of make up for it. But that's why I went with this, and by no means is this a final decision on a sprite or something. It literally everything that is in place, as far as animations, abilities, all that, it's on the table to be changed, thrown away, something like that. But I do want to pick things that are maybe a little bit closer to my end goal, as far as the image that I have in my head right now, just because I think seeing those kinds of things on the screen interacting with each other, if you're getting closer to that vision, it sort of helps you picture it a bit better and move towards that. Otherwise it becomes too much of a cluttered mess. So yeah, how do I go about fixing this kind of like visual mess, or where do I think the problems even lie? So the first thing is that there is no visual cohesion. I'll just kick it off for a second here. Let some enemies spawn, but like each individual sprite that I have right now, I think is really cool. When I look at the page for the artist who actually makes it, I'm always so impressed by what people can do with pixel art. So I see this main character, and I think like, oh wow, that's really cool, that's really good. I see this skeleton, I think, man, yeah, that's so cool. Same thing with this, but all of these together, I don't think paint this like amazing picture. We've got like this super bright pink whatever, it just stands out so much in this kind of like dungeony vibe that I have going on right now. Yeah, so much different than like the skeleton. The fidelity here on these pixels, this doesn't really line up with this. You've got like a lot more detail here in this sprite than something like this. Now, part of the way to fix that, or something that I played with a lot, was, really just like the zoom level. The further you go out, the more you can kind of either hide or potentially even emphasize some of the lack of detail or the detail. And same thing goes with when you zoom in. Now, it does look particularly bad here. I'm actually not sure why we are so zoomed in at this point. Oh, I've got the scale set, that's why. But yeah, just the idea that, if I'm zoomed out or in, the actual clarity and stuff like that, it varies a lot. And you might want to lean into the pixely nature of things. I think that can look cool by being more zoomed in and showing the edges and stuff like that. So getting some clarity could come from about a billion different things. You could do something like a single color or a palette of colors that kind of unites everything. And if there's a theme to the game, it can do that. Something as simple as like an outline around the characters, that could do a lot. Because I'm willing to throw away all these sprites by the end of things, I want to have a lot more in place before I really decide on what the final art is going to be. I'm not spending any money at this point, early stages. I want to be confident that I'm going to finish this project, but I'm also a realist. I know that, a lot of these things don't get done. So maybe further along the process, the more confident I get that this is fun and it's going to be completed, maybe I just spend the money on a single artist to get cohesion between, like, maybe they've made a bunch of monsters, I can put them all in the game, a cool character. Maybe you even go as far as commissioning things, something like that. One of the things I've even started playing with is 2D art in a 3D project. So if you've seen something like Paper Mario, where it's like a flat character that exists in a 3D world, I've seen some demos of people doing that in Unity, in Unreal. Some of the stuff they do, like, it looks amazing. I think functionally, a bit of a question. Does it actually feel good? Especially if I'm doing this kind of full rotation, things at an angle. Usually those times it's still just doing the flip. I know Paper Mario, it's like that. It's always flat to the camera. But you can even have a camera rotation that uses a billboarding effect to kind of get that. So that's an option. And then what I wanted to touch on, and something I don't really have in place here, but I've been messing with, I alluded to it a moment ago with those the particle effects. I've just been messing with lighting and what lighting in Unity does. Something I hadn't even considered at the onset. I really have like nothing in place here. Don't take this as good lighting. This is just me goofing around. But you've got the ability to add like a bloom effect to things. You have a spotlight. So if I was to put like a torch here, and you've got this little particle effect around it, and it sort of lights around here, you can affect what it's actually going to light, and hopefully get some shadows and things like that in place. You get a general kind of global light that lights the whole stage or the whole scene in this case. As well as potentially, I don't have it on now, but like a player spotlight. And you could attach that to like a lantern or something like that. Like, there's so much that you can do. I'm just starting to delve a bit into shaders, and it's been forever and ever since I was in school learning about shaders. So it's a bit of a new adventure for me. But from my little bit of testing and playing around, it seems like a really good way as well to get that kind of visual clarity. Everything that looks a bit off, you can kind of get a similar color, a similar lighting effect around it. And it starts to feel a little bit more natural. But I'll probably still, if I end up going with that, have to change sprite colors and things like that to also make it all come together. So that's the next big thing. That's what I'm sort of the most unhappy with, or unsatisfied with, I guess I should say. Originally, my next goal after this prototyping stage was to move towards a vertical slice. If you've never heard the term, in software, it's like getting the thinnest portion of every system you need in your software from top to bottom. So in this case, this would be like creating a new game, starting a level, beating that level, by attacking, fighting enemies, stuff like that. You get an item, the item has effects on your character, and then you save and you can reload, something like that. Probably with sound, I guess. There's no sound at the moment. So every little system, but just the tiniest bit that you would need for all that. So before I go that far, I'm forcing myself as the least artistic person on the planet, at least how I see myself in my head, to get some sort of visual clarity, some sort of visual style before moving forward, because I do want there to be a bit of visual appeal. Now, all that being said, the focus of this, I really want to rein in how visually impressive it's going to be. So there's a lot at play here and a lot that's going through my mind. We've got the Undertale soundtrack going today. You look at a game like that, at least outside of battle, they've got some cool artwork for all the characters. I think everyone would agree a typically pretty visually unimpressive game, and it doesn't try to be anything more than that. It looks like an old school Super Nintendo or something style game. It doesn't try to do all these fancy effects or anything like that, but the gameplay is just so amazing, such a great game. You don't really care. And it is cohesive at the end of the day, right? It all looks like it belongs together. Now, I've been looking in the other direction. What other kinds of good 2D games are there to emulate? Dead Cells really stands out. There's really interesting articles on how it was done visually. They take like a 3D model, convert it to a 2D model. All this insanity. They build like an in-house tool to do that and mess with it. And boy, they get like amazing effects, amazing models. It's got a ton of visual appeal. So I'm more on the Undertale side of things, where I just want it to be cohesive, and that's enough for me. Then spend all my time trying to make it visually impressive, because I don't think that's my strong suit, and that's not really going to be the selling point of this game. I really just want it to be the gameplay that drives it. So the other thing that pops to my head is what I would call like the Nintendo 64 effect, right? When people started first getting into 3D consoles, it's very rough. You know, you look at Ocarina of Time or Mario 64, boy, like you can count the pixels and edges and everything. If you go back and look at it, it's so dated. It really, really makes a big difference if they go and do some sort of like HD update. But if you go and play like a Super Nintendo game, it doesn't feel that way, because they weren't really going for realism. So you can buy into it. You can feel okay with it. So that's another thing. I don't want to go too hard on it, and then because I'm not that talented with it, sort of flop, and then it looks like I'm trying to be visually impressive, but it's not. So a lot there. Other than that, gameplay stuff that is sticking out to me. I mentioned it's a little stiff. One of the things, I think I've actually got the sheet here. Like, if we take a look at these attacks, something I always liked about Dark Souls and the feel of that kind of combat is when you're swinging, I think it does a really good job of like adding weight to your swings, adding weight to your movements. And so you're stepping into your attacks, and you feel, especially with some of those larger weapons, like it really feels like you're heaving this thing over your head. And this sprite, as is, you can see from the sheet, this guy looks more like he's swatting a fly or something, right? He just stands completely still with his feet during every swing. And I don't know if it's trying to be like a little more intimidating. He does get like the knee bend here, which I'm a fan of. I think the knee bend's kind of cool. But I wanted to try, I am not a good artist, so I'm not a good sprite editor or anything, but I wanted to try sort of meshing what they have with the move animation to maybe get a step on each of these attacks and see how that feels. See if I can get that less stiff feeling of moving towards my target, get some weight behind it, and then maybe a few little effects in there. I know screen shake is a popular one. I am usually not a fan, but maybe a tiny shake I can live with. but some sort of visual effect, a sound, something that gives you that weight. I always thought Path of Exile, when you're like level 1 and you just pick up a big stick and hit somebody, I thought that was a great example of having like a weighty feel to an attack as well. So something I might want to try to emulate a bit. Another thing that comes to mind, and something that I tried out, I'm not sure if it's going to be here. I'll launch this and see if maybe I can show it. I'm pretty sure I still left it in the code. Yeah. So this little like reticle here. Right now I have this. It's not even really great code, but if I'm getting close to a character, it is going to jump the reticle onto them. And I had written some code that'll have the character moving towards, both rotating and moving towards the character. So if your swing is slightly off, it's going to drift you towards a character. I know some people like that, some people hate it. You know, it's something that you probably would want as an option. While it feels stiff, the combat right now and the movement, I found when I put that in, although it was with this other sprite here, it felt too floaty. I'm drifting all over the place, and the way that I've got at least the collision stuff set up right now, it's got like real physics, so they're starting to like push each other around, and I didn't like that. It's like this floaty pushing of bodies around. Didn't quite feel right. But maybe the rotation, that's one of the things I wasn't a huge fan of here. Sometimes I feel like I miss with my attacks because there's such a wide radius. Maybe I would just rotate the character, and then if I could incorporate the step into the attack, that kind of weight behind my movements, maybe that would be okay. So something else to kind of play with, and something I've dabbled in. But I think those are probably all the highlights of what I've really gotten from prototyping. There's a lot of stuff. I've got tons of notes, tons of things that, I tried and didn't do, but it's enough that I think I've got stuff in place to circle back to if I ever need it, right? If I feel like, no, I do want that kind of like lock-on moving effect, I got a general idea of how to do it. I can tweak some numbers to, maybe make things a little less stiff, a little more stiff at certain moments, just to either get rid of that floatiness or maybe just add a bit of drift so it starts to feel a little more natural. Things like that. And input buffers, another thing I'd like to explore, like just an endless list of stuff. But I wanted to show at this stage in prototyping because I think it's a good point before I move to something a little more distinct, and that's going to be the visuals. So I'm thinking for next steps as far as making these videos and coming back, the goal right now is to focus on that sort of visual fidelity, that cohesion, and really for me just understanding shaders and lighting and what's possible. Hopefully get some artistic inspiration behind it. And then after that, work towards sort of a vertical slice where I would like to get these things in. How do I save a game and create a new save file? I want to get the inventory system in with items, have a character screen that shows the effects of it, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of work to do there. That's kind of typical ARPG stuff. And then as far as these videos go, I think before we revisit any of the game, I've been showing a lot of like code and Unity and all that kind of stuff. I want to take a shift into the game design space. I want to talk a little bit about my ideas for itemization and why I think this itemization will be fun and distinct and where the inspiration comes from. So we'll take a look at that, and then hopefully there's something kind of visually to go back to and show off. And if not, well, maybe we'll talk some more game design theory, or maybe you just don't see a video for a while. I don't know. We'll see. So I don't know. I could talk about this stuff all day. A lot of fun. Love fielding questions. Seeing actually the number of likes for these sorts of videos. I know it's not my usual sort of content, but I can blabber about this sort of stuff all day. So but I'll end it there. I'll rein it in. Thank you very much for watching this. Hopefully some of the stuff coming in the future is sort of interesting to you, and see you guys for that stuff.